If someone asks you to define what makes a good modern smartphone, what features would the first come to your mind? Perhaps a nice large high refresh screen? A really good camera system? A powerful hardware? Attractive design? Also, do you think other users would pick the exact same things? I'll tell you right away, the answer is no. I personally prefer a smaller form factor packed with a great battery life and a nice camera system. While zoom isn't something that's relatively important to me, a feature like optical stabilization for video recording certainly is. Design is another thing I care for, since I'm one of the daredevils who carry their phone without a case. Yeah, I honestly like to live on the edge. Now, I am aware that my preferences probably do not match many other users, which is perfectly fine since we're all unique. This is something that phone manufacturers are aware of, and that is why they have a large variety of models with different features: small phones, big phones, different camera setups, various designs, phones with fast chargers, those without chargers, cameras underneath the screen, and so on. All of that means that we have a large pool of devices to choose from, and everyone can pick what they like, and more importantly, that fits their budget. I presume that was the same thought process Huawei had when they designed their latest premium phones, the Nova 10 and Nova 10 Pro. Today, we're taking a look at the Pro version, which at first glance seems like the more interesting of the two. There are three key features that Huawei is marketing about these models, and that is the dual front camera with 2x zoom and 60 megapixel sensors, 100-watt fast charging, and somewhat unique design. Now that is not all, as the Nova 10 Pro has several other cards up their sleeve. This phone comes equipped with the large curved 6.78-inch AMOLED screen with the billion colors, HDR10 support, and 120Hz refresh rate. The resolution is 2652 x 1200 pixels, which is quite enough even for the pixel peepers who criticize anything under 3400 x 1440 pixels. Now, I'm pretty sure that they wouldn't see a difference between 300 and 500 pixels per inch, even if they were side by side next to each other. Nice brightness and AMOLED guarantee high contrast and good visibility even on a sunny day. The software allows an enviable level of adjustment, but we recommend the normal mode, which presents a natural display and accurate color reproduction. The two front-facing cameras are located in the upper left corner of the screen in the form of a pill-shaped cutout, while the optical finger sensor is located near the bottom of the middle of the screen. Its position is not exactly in the best ergonomic place, as it requires you to lift the phone slightly in your hand to unlock it, but it makes it up all with its accuracy. The screen is curved on both sides and has that forgotten look that premium phones had a few years back, when all flagship phones had curved edges. It is the same with the back, where the glass also wraps around the edges of the thin but structurally sound case. Design-wise, there's a lot going on in the back. The phone comes in two colors, the Star Silver and Star Black. This silver version we got to test combines gold and black details for a unique look on the back. The entire glass back has a fine sandblasted texture and shimmers discreetly under the light, while the bottom is adorned with Huawei and Nova logos with the parent company's address. So if you ever get lost in Dongguan and want to see where all the ideas for Huawei phones come from, now you know where to look. While the Huawei logo blends in with the texture of the back, the Nova lettering is bright and very striking, with white outline to further highlight it. The visually most striking feature of this phone is certainly the camera housing, which dominates in all of its parameters: dimension, design, and colors. Given that it carries three cameras, the dimension may be a bit exaggerated, but we believe that this is done to highlight the specific design. The case itself is glossy and black, while its frames are gold, as is the ring around the centrally positioned main camera. Above it is the wide-angle camera, and below it is the depth sensor, while the flash is located outside the frame next to the camera system. The large frame has the AI triple camera inscription on it, as well as the additional information about the resolution and size of the main sensor. Now, personally, I can't say that I'm that thrilled with the design, and I think that with the silver and gold combination, Huawei may have had the female population in mind more than male, though I didn't mind carrying this phone as my primary phone for the last 10 days. Now, on the other hand, women that I showed it mostly commented the design is attractive and that they like the Nova 10 Pro's design has gone a little outside of the norm. The rest of the phone's body is standard for high-end Huawei phones. Solid side buttons without any unnecessary wiggle room, stereo speakers, 2 microphone openings, a SIM card slot, and a USB-C port, all in its spots where you would expect them to be. Now, the overall impression is that the Nova 10 Pro is a very high-quality, well-made phone with a distinct design that will divide the audience into those who really like it and those who don't like it at all. As for the screen, the type of protection is unfortunately not specified anywhere, but Huawei ships new models straight from the factory with a protective foil that does not need to be removed, as it will come in handy against some minor scratches. The package also comes with a transparent case, so you will save $10 to $20 and protect the phone from falls and accidental bumps during use without hiding the unusual design of these models. Now, inside the phone, we find the exact same hardware from last year, the 4G version of the Snapdragon 778G, so we were a bit disappointed that didn't wait a bit longer for the new Snapdragon 7 Gen 1 chipset. At least they decided to stick with a platform that proved to be good on the Nova 9 lineup, so you won't feel any lack of power during daily tasks. It's an excellent platform made in 6nm process with Cryo 670 cores operating in the range between 1.8 and 2.4 GHz. Now, the phone comes with 8GB of RAM and 2 storage options, 128 and 256 GB, same as, well, you guessed it, the last year's models. Connections supported are Wi-Fi 6 at 2.4 and 5 GHz, Bluetooth 5.2 and 3-band GPS. One of the most important improvements over the previous generation is the battery, with a capacity bump from 4,000 to 4,500 mAh, as well as fast charging with 100-watt charger, which, believe it or not, is included in a box. Huawei is one of the few companies on the market that still ship their phones with charger and a case, so kudos to them for that. Please note that when you do connect the phone to the charger, charging starts with a power of 66 watts, so in order to activate the super fast charging with full 100 watts of power, you need to press the bubble on the animation that appears when the phone is connected to the charger. This is very important because it means that fast charging needs to be activated by software, and therefore a turned off phone will not be charged at 100 watts, at least until the system boots and you activate the fast charging. Also, fast charging can be activated by pressing the bubble only shortly after the charger is connected, which means when the phone is empty, you need to connect the charger, wait for the system to boot, then remove the charger for a moment, connect it again, and then activate the fast charging. Now, this is the reason why we have to talk about 2 different charging scenarios, from 0 to 100 when the battery is completely empty, and from 1% to 100 when the phone is just seconds away from shutting off. When it's completely empty, connecting to a charger and activating fast charging means you'll get 42% in 10 minutes or 78% in 20 minutes, while charging to 100% takes 28 minutes. On the other hand, if the phone is not turned off and you immediately activate fast charging, the situation is a tad bit different. Thus, in 10 minutes, the battery reaches from 1% to 65%, in 20 minutes to 86%, while it takes 23 minutes until the battery is fully charged. Of course, you should keep in mind that 100-watt charging is reserved for situations where you absolutely need the very fast charge, while every other time the phone will and should be charged with a 66 watt of power in order to preserve the battery and its longevity. Huawei also offers other options that preserve battery life and improve autonomy. One is Smart Charge, which learns your usage habits and does not charge your phone more than 80%, but instead times the remaining 20% just before you would need to take the phone with you. This option is great for all of us who like to leave our phone connected to the charger all night. With Smart Charge, the phone will charge to 80%, then the remaining 20% will continue just before your alarm goes off for work, training, or school. Smart battery capacity is an option that does not charge the battery to the end, but slightly below its maximum capacity, again in order to preserve its battery life in the long run, because the battery is much more overloaded by charging closer to the maximum capacity. The combination of the more economic chipset and a large battery turned out to be very good, so even with locked G-space and memory and all-day use, we always managed to save over 30% of the battery before the end of the day. So for an average user, the Nova 10 Pro realistically provides a day and a half or up to 2 days of practical use. For the European market, the Nova models use the EMUI 12.0.1 user interface and an OS based on one of the latest open source Android operating systems without Google Mobile Services. With this generation, Huawei has decided to make the App Gallery the official store for the apps. G-Space is also supported, which works perfectly well with all the applications you can think of, while the ones you can't find there, such as Netflix, can be found through pedal search, which is still the default on this platform. This is all well thought out and designed, and most importantly works so well that Huawei is getting closer to completely bypassing the limitations imposed by the lack of Play Store and Google services. What bothered us was the presence of a lot of ads, especially while using apps via G-Space, which can be quite annoying when you want to check Gmail or watch something on YouTube, so we hope Huawei will solve this soon. Another thing that carried over from the previous generation is, well, the camera system. Yes, there are some cosmetic changes, but basically everything is identical. The main camera has the well-known Samsung ISOCELL JD1 50-megapixel sensor with f1.8 lens and RYYB color filter instead of the classic RGGB, which means that even more light for situations where it makes the difference between an average and a very good photo. There's an 8-megapixel wide-angle camera with fixated focus and an f2.2 aperture and a 2-megapixel depth sensor for better focusing and portraits. Now on the front, the 10 Pro has two cameras, the main one 60-megapixel wide-angle one and a portrait 2x zoom lens in front of an 8-megapixel sensor. All cameras support 4K at 30 FPS, which is commendable and gives a high level of flexibility, especially since the phone allows you to switch from one to another during recording or record with two cameras simultaneously in vlog mode. The main camera takes some good photos. The focusing system is fast. As long as there's enough light in the frame, the camera captures plenty of detail. The dynamic range is somewhat narrower when compared to models in a similar price range, but the noise control is extremely good. Due to the lower resolution, the wide-angle camera does not offer the same level of detail as the main one. Sharpening is noticeable and the dynamic range is noticeably narrower. Even though the amount of detail that this sensor manages to capture is much lower, the images are quite good considering the fixed focus and the inferior sensor with a smaller aperture. The camera also has a 2x zoom option in the software settings, which is actually just cropping the full resolution of the sensor, though it gives pretty good results. Low light conditions are not too much of a problem for this smartphone's camera. A pleasant surprise is the wide-angle camera, which, despite the fact that it does not have a night mode, manages to capture decent photos. On the other hand, the main camera benefits from the night mode in low light conditions, especially in darker shadows, so it's highly recommended that you use it whenever you get the chance. Noise control is exceptional on the main camera in regular and night mode, so we have only good words of praise for the cameras, even though they're inherited from the last year's Nova 9 Pro model. Video recordings are also nice and detailed, with a bit of details lost in the darkest parts, but still very good overall quality, even though the main camera only has electronic stabilization available, which does its job very well. The shots with wide-angle cameras are noticeably worse for several reasons. The colors are washed out, the dynamic range is much narrower, and there's a noise on all slightly darker surfaces, so we recommend that you do not use this camera for video unless you absolutely have to. On the other side of the phone, two front cameras with completely different capabilities are there mainly for two things: selfie photos and vlogging videos. Two cameras allow you to fill up your Instagram profile very quickly because both have specific features. The main camera has a 60-megapixel sensor with quad-Bayer technology and an autofocus system behind a wide-angle lens that captures an angle of 100 degrees. This is precisely why the camera app will offer you 3 options: 0.8x, 1x, and 2x zoom, and the main camera takes care of the first 2. 0.8x is actually its true width, while 1x is slightly cropped shot. The zoom camera has somewhat more modest features. It has an 8-megapixel sensor, infinity focus, and an aperture of f2.2. This system gives you extra flexibility when you want to take good selfies, as you have 3 levels of zoom at your disposal, just like with the rear cameras. Since the Nova 10 Pro phone arrives for testing at the same time as the iPhone 14 series, we had the opportunity to directly compare the flagship cameras head-on. The images taken by the main front camera of the Nova 10 Pro are certainly a worthy adversary for those of flagship models from Samsung and Apple that are twice as expensive, though each of them have their own strong and weak points. The iPhone 14 Pro, for example, takes very sharp images but overdoes post-processing a bit, so they look unnaturally sharp when you zoom in a bit. Samsung, on the other hand, insists on natural, warmer colors and captures a large amount of detail. The Huawei Nova 10 Pro, on the other hand, is somewhat in the middle with a very detailed photo, slightly more vivid colors, but also perhaps the most natural display of all 3 phones. Dynamic range is very good, noise control is much better than the best Samsung and Apple phones with a much wider frame. The portrait camera, on the other hand, allows for 2x zoom, which magnifies the subject quite a bit, so even if you have long arms, you need to stretch out quite a bit in order to get your entire head in the frame, and all this is just further complicated by the fact that camera is located at the upper left corner, so when you want to take a horizontal photo with your right hand, the lens is at the bottom left, which makes it much more difficult to frame with the zoom camera. With vertical photos, the situation is not so problematic and left-handed users will surely manage better. The image quality at 2x is good, but significantly lower than the main camera. When you try to stretch your hand as far as you can to frame your face nicely, it will often result in blurry photos due to lack of stabilization on the zoom lens. This camera also allows 5x zoom, which uses additional digital zoom, but such photos seem to be good only for a tripod, since the micro shaking of such a large phone very much influences the overall shot. And while the main selfie camera is rather exceptional, we weren't able to put the 2x camera to good use, because the zoom is such that it just isn't quite practical in real use, unless you're doing makeup tutorials or something like that. What we also didn't like is the color profile of the main camera shift towards cooler tones, while the portrait one to much warmer ones, and the real view is halfway between one and the other. We would prefer consistent colors across all cameras, even if it would not be 100% accurate, rather than white being bluish on one and yellowish on the other. Now, after spending time with Nova 10 Pro, we have to admit that our impressions are somewhat mixed. It does have a unique design, but which realistically isn't for everyone, plus a large battery and a 100-watt charger, but you had those features on the last year's model as well. Its back cameras are really good, again almost the same as the last year, and an exceptional selfie camera with a not so useful front portrait mode. The lack of Google services is hardly noticeable, well, at least apart from the ads, which is something you don't want to see on a €750 phone. And those retail prices are really high. For the amount of money, you can definitely get a much more powerful and better phone and have a nice selection to pick from. Now, maybe those phones don't have a selfie camera like the Nova 10 Pro, but many other things are more advanced. Simply put, the Huawei Nova 10 Pro is a vlogger phone. It's different enough that it will attract some attention when you use it, and it has a fantastic front-facing camera for anyone who spends more time using that than the main one. The 2x portrait camera was, in our personal opinion, not really needed because the main selfie camera will achieve equal, if not better, results. Now, sadly, the era of good cheap phones seem to be over. The market has changed, and you can no longer buy a phone with a flagship chipset for $450 and a fantastic camera for just a bit more cash. The prices have skyrocketed globally, and the price of the Nova 10 Pro should come as no surprise. We believe that Huawei is well aware of this, but one thing is certain. This phone offers a specific package of features that you either cannot live without or are completely irrelevant to you. If you're in the first group, congratulations, look no further. For everyone else, don't despair. Some really good last year models will get discounts for the holidays, so you can definitely take your pick. And as always, thank you for watching the Bench House review of the Huawei Nova 10 Pro. For more reviews, please subscribe to our channel and stay tuned. My name is Marco, and I will see you next time.